Okay, my friends, welcome to another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A here on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel, where we are simplifying fitness by taking a fundamental approach to diet and exercise, giving you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly, founder of the Red Delta Project. Today's episode is sponsored by the RDP Library. All the books I've created over the years, including Grind Style Calisthenics, Overcoming Isometrics, micro workouts, and smart bodyweight training, as well as many others. Links to those are down below in the description. And today's topic, speaking of a fundamental approach to fitness, is all about what do you need to have a really good workout plan and program. And this is something addressing many questions I get over the years of how do I know if this is a good program? And I get people emailing me all the time saying, okay, here's my program. Is it any good? Is it bad and stuff? And I've addressed this several times over. But what we're doing today that's a little bit different is when it really boils down to is there's only three fundamental principles you need to make sure you have in place to have a good routine. Everything else can kind of just be wherever, whatever, do whatever you like to suit your lifestyle and your preferences and so forth. But really, you only need two basic things. So the analogy I often use when creating a good program is to look at it like you're sending a rocket into space. You're trying to get results. That's getting the rocket up into space. Now, your good routine is the launch pad for that rocket. And that's what it does. And ideally, launch pads, I know that do many things, of course, in the practical sense. You go over to SpaceX and it's very complicated. But really, when it comes down to like launching just like a model rocket or something, the launch pad only has two jobs. And that is to give stability to the rocket, to make sure that it's on a stable platform and that you're pointed in the right direction. That's it. Those are the only two things that you need from a launch pad. And fundamentally, those are the only two things you need from your workout program. So today we're going to be exploring those two things and how you can get them, because as long as you got that, your workout program is as good as it's going to get. And we're also going to be exploring why ultimately your success does not ultimately come from your routine. I know we hear this all the time in marketing, and it's like, this is the routine for building muscle, and this is the routine for fat loss, or this is the routine for bigger biceps and stuff. But ultimately, those results don't come from the routine. That's like saying the rocket goes into space because of the launch pad. No, the rocket goes into space because of the rocket. It's the engines in the rocket, the fuel in the rocket. The rocket goes into space. The routine doesn't get you results. It just gives you a platform that makes it possible for you to do the things that get you results. So we got folks coming on in here. How you doing, everybody? Thank you very much for coming on in. Sorry, I wasn't able to put up a little tile on the RDP Instagram to announce when this was coming up. I got a little bit distracted and the time got away from me. So thanks so much for coming on in. So, all right, two fundamental things for a good workout program. You got these, you're set. So the first thing is you've got to be pointed in the right direction. And that's why whenever I meet with somebody, of course, we start off with, well, what are your goals? What do you want to get out of your training? Because everything based around programming your routines and what you're going to be doing has to be based around that thing. And there's a million and one different ways of looking at things from, it's like what kind of goals, and there's subjective goals and objective goals. And you can really get buried very quickly trying to, there's whole books written about goal setting and helping you understand what you want in life, because few things are more potent and powerful in life, especially in fitness, than getting clear on what you want. So there's a couple of ways that I want you to simplify this. The first off is fitness goals versus training goals. Okay, so a fitness goal might be, I want to lose weight. I want to have bigger muscles. I want to feel better. A lot of times people say, I just want to be more fit. Okay, these are fitness goals. Now, the thing is, fitness goals are great, but we don't want to fixate on those too much when we're programming our workout. Why? Because ultimately, your workout is not solely in control of those results. There's no such thing as a weight loss program. There's no such thing as a workout that will solely be responsible for building bigger muscles. You want to be healthier, have energy and less joint pain? Awesome. Your workouts are a good part of that, but they're only a part of it. They're only one piece of the puzzle. So we get in trouble when we're like, what's the exercise that'll make me leaner? There isn't one. What's the exercise of the program that's going to make me have that V-shaped torso? Well, we can do things that will be beneficial, but there's other variables involved. There's sleep, there's diet, which is also very big. There's lifestyle consideration, there's stress. There's a million other things that go into fitness goals. So that's why when we're trying to build a training program, we want to get focused on a training goal, an objective, which is much more direct and clear on what do we want to actually make our body do during the workout. And of course, that can be reflective of what we're trying to do, as I'll explain in a minute, but and help us get a fitness goal. However, when we're trying to frame a goal for the workout, we want a training goal, not necessarily just a fitness goal. So Sniff Rat coming on in. How's it going, my friend? Champ in the making. What's up? He says, what's up, my friend? So that's the first thing. What are we trying to make our body do? Because that's ultimately what working out is this is what I want to tell my body to do and upgrade its capacity. And there's a million different ways we can look at this, but let's simplify it still. There are three fundamental objectives to training. And it's going to be one of these three that we're going to want to focus on. Objective number one is the most broad, general, and basic, which is the expenditure of energy. And most of the time, people are like, oh yeah, burning calories for fat loss and stuff. It's like, yes, absolutely. Fat loss, burning calories, very good. However, it can go beyond that. It can be burning off stress. It can be relieving the energy of the day. You could have a hard day at work and you're just kind of, God, Mary from accounting, why does she always do this to me kind of thing? And so you're just going to go and you're going to hit the heavy bag and you just got to unload some energy because it feels good to do so. So when our objective is energy expenditure, mental energy, physical energy, hell, even emotional energy, the good thing is that this is the most general objective we can go for, which means you don't really need to worry about the specifics all that much when it comes to your training program, because literally anything you do will burn energy, will use energy. You can literally do anything and it's going to work. This is one of the great reasons why there's no such thing as weight loss exercise, because everything burns fat and calories. However, do keep in mind that the two ways that we can influence how much energy you're burning is how long your activity is and how intense your activity is. The harder you work, the faster you burn off energy, and the longer you go, the more energy you burn. Now, typically, I know this is a gross generalization, but typically, when the objective is to burn fat and calories, we want to go a little more on the duration side. Because I don't care how intense your workout is, you just can't burn a lot of physical energy if you don't use a lot of time doing it. It's like, what about HIIT training and stuff? It's like, yeah, but it's 10 minutes. It's physiologically impossible to burn a lot of calories in 10 minutes, no matter what you do and how you're training. But you go out and do anything for 2 hours, you're going to burn some decent calories and fat from that. So if the objective is physical energy in the form of fat and calories, edge more towards the side of duration and use intensity where you can. When it comes to stress relief, mental energy and all that sort of thing, that's typically more intensity based. Like I said, punching the punching bag, HIIT training, sprints on the treadmill, hill sprints, that sort of thing. Very cathartic to do that sort of thing. Here in Colorado, we have something called the mini incline, which is a shorter version of the infamous Manitou incline, which is just a big staircase. And it's 200 steps tall. And it's real. I mean, you go up that sucker, your heart feels like it's going to explode out of your chest. And I'll sometimes go and I'll hit that a few times. And I'm a new person afterwards, like, oh, I needed that after just a few laps of that. So typically when it comes to, I just want to burn off energy, do anything you want. Doesn't matter really what you do. Don't worry about the nuances of it and stuff. But the more you do, the more physical energy you burn, and the more intensely you go, the more physical energy you burn per relative unit of time, but also very cathartic. So that's when the objective is, I want to burn off energy. Let's get to some of these questions here. Champ in the Making asking, do you think mental health affect training like clear mind versus overthinking? Because I tend to overthink. Absolutely. One of the best things that can help you overcome overthinking is to take massive action. Few things will clarify what you need to do more than experience. So a lot of times we get overthinking because we're consuming way too much information online, ironically hearing this from a podcast, and we're not applying it enough. So a lot of times, especially when it comes to getting information from YouTube videos and stuff, it's so easy to consume information that people will often consume a lot more information, but apply very little. And we want to reverse that around. You want to be taking action, 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 and then learning little bits here and there. And that can quickly overcome paralysis by analysis and overthinking. Fantastic question right there. Excuse me. It's a cold, rainy day here in Denver, Colorado. I was feeling very congested and stuff. Glory asking, what muscles need to be worked to have strong knees and ankles? I'm looking to condition my body for parkour. So it's basically everything in the lower body for the most part. But believe it or not, a lot of it comes from your hips. Having strong hips, glutes, hamstrings too, of course, but also your lateral hips, your adductors and your abductors as well, because your hips are an area of the body that are very strong and very, very stable. And that's where you can handle a ton of force and stress, or at least you should be able to. But if those areas are not stable and they're not strong, then the stress goes down to your knees, which don't handle it so well, or even further down to your ankles, which handle it even worse. So think of your proximal joints, like your shoulder blades and your hips, as being very strong, very robust, can handle a lot of punishment, as long as they're strong and stable. But if they're not, then the stress goes to the more distal joints, which don't do such a good job and leave you more injury prone. Fantastic question. Good questions coming on in here, folks. Thanks for coming on in. Santiago, California. Hey, Matt. So basically, if one wants to gain muscle, we should look at the physiological factors responsible for this instead of looking for the best routine or the best exercises, etc. Exactly. As my chemistry teacher from high school always told us, look at what's happening on the cellular level. It's like, look at what happens to the cells under these conditions. That's what's going to be responsible for the changes and adaptation you want in the organism or the organ or the tissue or whatever. So I always boil it down to what's going on in the cellular level. But our fitness culture often encourages us to be much more superficial of what kind of exercise are you doing? Are you lifting dumbbells or kettlebells? Are you working out in the morning? What's your protein supplement? And all this stuff. And that's not to say that stuff isn't important. It's just not that important. And it's because we're getting so distracted with the superficial stuff that really doesn't matter very much. We got to get focused more on what is my muscle doing? What is my body doing on a cellular level? That's the fundamental level. I don't care what program you're on. I don't care what exercises you're doing. I don't care what tools you're using. If you're working your biceps, if you're making the cells in your biceps work under progressively heavier amounts of tension and or duration, you're creating a stimulus to make them bigger and stronger, regardless of any other factors, because that's what's fundamentally important. That's why your body changes. But we get so lost in the debates of, is it better to do curls with barbells or dumbbells? Or what about machines? Or what about bands? Or what about that? Who cares? Honestly, that stuff really isn't that important unless it does matter to you, which I'll get into a little bit later on in today's episode. So speaking of building muscle, let's get into fundamental objective number 2. We covered objective is expenditure of energy. Now, the other one is, what if I want to condition the actual muscle tissues themselves? Okay, that's objective number 2. I'm doing an exercise. I want to condition my muscles. Now, when we're doing that, we need a little bit more specificity. It's still somewhat general, but specificity is we need to make sure we're using methods that can tax the muscle fibers adequately, depending on what we're going after. So to a degree, that's going to depend on what kind of exercise you're doing and what kind of tools you're using and so on, but not too specific. So once again, just as we had with the energy expenditure, we've got those two variables of intensity and duration. But when it comes to muscle fibers, we have intensity, which is how much tension is in the fibers, aka strength. And then we have the duration of that tension, aka endurance. So when we're programming for muscles, we need to make sure that we're using methods that directly engage the muscle that we want to engage. Biceps, lats, quads, that sort of thing. So that should be fairly obvious. I'm not going to build bigger arms if I'm just doing lunges all day. But you also want to be mindful of, do I focus on putting tension in the muscle or duration of the tension? Strength versus endurance. And of course, they're kind of on a teeter-totter back and forth. The more you have of one, the less you're going to have of the other, and vice versa. And of course, you can have a middle ground. And you don't need to necessarily choose one or the other all the time. Like in grind style calisthenics, we do both in our workouts, where we'll have a strength phase where we're purposely using exercises that use a lot of resistance. So the strength or the tension factor is very high. So reps are 3-5 repetition-ish, around there. And then for the finisher phase, we flip it and we go with more duration. So we're using lighter exercises and we're higher repetition, 10, 15, 20 reps that really burn out the muscle. So you don't need to choose one or the other, but it is a mindful thing to be paying attention to. You don't want to just work the muscle and assume because it's working hard, it's going to be effective. You want to make sure you're saying it's working hard, but how is it working? What way is the muscle working in order to program for what you want? I want more strength. Good. Then use methods that are going to put more tension in the muscle. I want more of an endurance. I just want to burn the muscle out. Okay, good. Use things that are going to be a little bit lower in intensity, but longer in duration. This is pretty easy, self-evident sort of thing to address right there. So that's the second fundamental objective. We've got energy expenditure as number one, very general, doesn't need anything too specific. Number two, of muscular work capacity, and that is for your ability to either strengthen the muscle endurance, and of course, muscular hypertrophy is a combination of the two, and you're just pushing the muscle basically for both, and really pushing it to a high rate of fatigue for stimulation of that. So that's your second objective. Let's see. What else can we address? I know I've got some other questions. Again, if you put a hey Matt in the content and your comment there, I know that's addressed to me rather than talking amongst yourselves. But Dave is in the house. Hey, Dave. Hey, Matt, thanks for the tip about relaxing the hips and legs during jackknife pull-ups. Definitely helped. Absolutely, Dave. So that's a little thing to be mindful of when you're programming your workouts for your second objective of what muscles are working during the exercise. So you could be doing jackknife pull-ups where you have your feet up on a bench or something, and you're doing pull-ups like on rings or a low bar. And you could be like, man, I feel like my legs are doing so much of the work. Remember, muscle tension is something we feel. It's something that we have a sensory output with. So we want to feel the muscle working to know you're adequately addressing it. If you're doing an exercise that's supposed to work a certain muscle, like pull-ups, and it's like it's supposed to work my lats, but you don't really feel the lat working, that may be something to address. And you either need to improve the engagement of the muscle, maybe improve the technique of it, like you're all hunched up with those pull-ups, you're pushing with other muscles, compensating somewhere, and so forth. So when it comes to the second objective, we want to make sure we feel that muscle working. Let's see, what else can we address here? Glory asking, what can the body adapt to? If there's tension on muscles and stronger, body will make them stronger. But what about taking hits? Oh, very good. Now, I don't really know too much about specific hits like in martial arts and stuff. There's certainly adaptation. I mean, you can adapt to darn near anything for your body to regain a homeostatic state with in an environment. And I would even go so far as to say many times it's not so much physiological adaptation as it is psychological adaptation to become more comfortable with stuff. When people start in the martial arts and they kind of get knocked around a little bit in free sparring, you see them get a little ruffled and they're like, oh, God damn, man, they're fucking little. And they get emotional about it. And kids, sometimes they'll even start to get a little upset with themselves and maybe even cry a little bit and stuff. Very natural reaction because we're not used to that. But over time, you start getting your bell rung. And then you start seeing people in free sparring and they get hit and they're like, oh man, that was a good kick. Yeah, all right, high five kind of thing. And it doesn't faze you at all. So I would say in that case, a lot of times it's much more about a psychological adaptation. Same thing used to happen to me every spring with bike racing. I'd get out on that first bike race. And of course, in a bike race, you're just going all out 100%. You feel like you can't possibly endure the length of the entire race because I was doing these 20K sprints. And the first couple of races, my mind psychologically, I'd be like, this is terrible. This is horrible. I hate this. This is torturous. But after several races, I would get more of a psychological comfort zone with it. My body still felt the same level of intensity. It still hurt like hell to go through these races. But my mind was like, oh, here we go again. Okay, here we go. Let's go. And instead of being like, come on, I'd be talking with people in the first lap like, hey, you want to go grab a pizza afterwards? Yeah, sure. I'll see you at the finish line. Great. Awesome. Right. It's a psychological thing for that. But a lot of different types of adaptation are happening. Alex how's it going, Alex? Hey, Matt, watch your video on transversi abdominis. I started practicing it daily. Plus, I added leg raises and reverse hip extensions. Very good, my man. That cured my 3 years of lower back pain in 2 weeks. It's crazy. Fantastic, my friend. I would bet money what's going on is you're getting more of a neutral pelvis, especially with the reverse hip extensions. Make sure you stay on those because that's usually where a lot of people are faltering and getting a lot weaker. And that's probably what's making a big difference for you. Congratulations. And that segues perfectly into the third fundamental objective of training, our training goal, which is performance. Now, the first one is the expenditure of energy, very general, doesn't need to be too specific. The second one is muscular conditioning. That's more specific, but it's still kind of general because you can basically do almost any sort of exercises or methods you like as long as you're working the muscle adequately. But when it comes to performance, that's when we go into our training and we have a very specific idea on, I need my body to do this thing this way. So in that case, it would be, I need my body to be able to create or maintain more of a neutral pelvic tilt to take stress off my back. Or I need to engage my glutes and hamstrings more to extend my hip a bit more and create more of a posterior tilt or something. This is when we're going in and like, I need my body to be able to do X. And for that objective, you're going in with much more specificity because you have to practice the exact thing that you're trying to do. You don't want to make it too vague. You don't want to make it like, what kind of exercise should I do? What kind of training program is good for lower back pain or whatever? You go in with as much specificity as possible so that way you can hit that nail right on the head perfectly every single time. And this is why, especially when you have performance goals, you want to have a coach or a therapist or a teacher or someone who can assess what's going on and say, this is exactly what you need your body to do better. Here's exactly how we can go about doing it. Otherwise, you're just kind of randomly guessing and trying various things left and right, and it's basically guesswork. Now, one of the things to recognize about these three fundamental objectives of energy expenditure, muscular conditioning, and performance is that everything you do will always involve all three. I mean, even as I'm standing here talking in front of you folks, I'm burning calories, I'm using my muscular work capacity to some degree, and I have some sort of specific performance as I'm standing here. Everything is always all three. However, when you're creating your program, you want to be emphasizing one of them. It's like, what is most important to you? If your goal is, I want to relieve stress, I'm trying to lose weight, I'm trying to just burn off a lot of physiological energy, okay, then you're emphasizing energy output. If your goal is muscular conditioning, I need to be stronger, more endurance, or building muscle for aesthetic purposes, muscular conditioning is your primary thing. And if you are specific on, I need my body to look or to feel better and perform in a better way, that's more specific there, and you want to go into it with the emphasis on, I'm practicing. This is your quote, skill work. I'm practicing making my body work better for this objective. So it's not about which one do I have, because you always have all three, it's a case of which one are you focusing on. And this is both in the macro and the micro. It's like, what am I doing in my 6-month program? What am I doing this week? Hell, what am I just doing this afternoon? All right. You can be focused on one and then change over to the other. Like sometimes I may go for a bike ride and I'm like, oh man, I'm just so stressed out. I'm going to just ride a whole lot and make sure I plan these hills that are really intense to de-stress and just really jack my heart rate up. So that's energy expenditure. Or I could be going into the bike ride going like, man, my legs just are not strong enough to get past this technical section. So I'm going to make sure that I'm riding in a higher gear than normal to really work the muscular strength in my legs to make me a stronger rider. Or it could be, I'm just not very good at the technical aspects of my mountain biking. My weight shifting is not very good. So when I'm going down hills, I want to make sure that I've got a little bit less weight on the front wheel and I can just kind of skip across the rocks. So I'm still going for the same bike ride, but I'm focusing on which one am I trying to obtain. So that's the first principle of getting your workout program really dialed in, is what is your objective, pointing you in the right direction. Energy expenditure, muscular work capacity, conditioning, and performance enhancement. Which one of those things are you going after? Let's get to a couple more of these fine questions. David's asking, hey, Matt, I can't run outside for a while, but want to train for a half marathon. Any suggestions for a workaround until I can run? So it depends on what your limitation is. I mean, can you not run outside because you're in Ukraine right now and you're getting invaded by Russia? Hopefully not. I don't assume so. But in that case, I would say get the hell out of Ukraine. But is it weather related? Are you injured like I am? Like I hurt my knee last Sunday, so running is totally out of the question for me. Or is it you just don't have the time? What's the limitation? Because depending on what your limitation is, we've got to work around that. But I would say for now, if you can't get the running in, get some sort of lower body conditioning, however you can, that's somewhat similar. My advice would be hiking. Cycling would be a good way to go about it as well. Maybe you would just kind of get some good leg work in, like, okay, lunges for 20 minutes, let's go kind of stuff. Part of that is also, again, that psychological adaptation that I was talking about, building things up. Let me know what is your limitation so we can get around that. 4 layers of strength. Good point here. Sometimes people enjoy the guesswork more than any performance goals they have in their mind. Yeah, a lot of times we like to just get the runaround. We have fun with just trying different things. And that's perfectly fine. Like I said, you can have a lot of clarity when you have an objective, but sometimes people are like, I just don't know what I want. It's like a kid going into college. Like, I don't know what I want to study. I don't want to major. Fine, then just do whatever. Literally throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. But in that case, I certainly encourage you, don't worry about your workout routine. That's one of the reasons why I think CrossFit got so big, particularly in the early 2000s. Because people are like, it's not specific, it's not training anything. So I'm like, exactly. You know how many times I'd ask people, what are your workout goals? And they'd be like, I just want to be fit. I don't know. I just want to feel better. I just want to look better. Kind of nothing specific at all. And it's like CrossFit was created for the person who, I just want to be fit. Like they don't have anything special they want. They don't know what they want. They don't have anything specific. So in that case, it's like, yeah, literally just burpees, do barbell cleans, do jumping jacks for 32 and 3/8 seconds. Now go compete in this chess tournament, juggle a kettlebell, crawl on your hands and knees, paint this fence, just random stuff, throw stuff at you and just see what sticks. Because when you don't have specific goals, you don't need specific workouts and programs. Just literally do anything. And the only thing you got to watch out for there is just don't do stuff that's going to hurt you. Make sure you have good technique and stuff. But yeah, there's certainly a case to be said for just do stuff and have fun with it. Be like a kid playing at recess. They don't have a program. They don't have a routine. They're playing tag and they're playing dodgeball and all sorts of things. And it's like, it works. It's awesome. There's no such thing as an ineffective workout. There's no such thing as an ineffective exercise, rep, or even set, because everything we do trains and conditions our body somehow. So if you don't have a particular direction you need to go into, then just go somewhere and you're going to be better off than standing still. All right. Oh, good relationship question. Blue F, hey, Matt boy, should I stay single nowadays? Well, I certainly am a big fan of it myself. Yeah, I'm loving the bachelor pad life myself. It's maybe not so much being single, but living alone. At age of 44 now, this is the first time in my life I've actually lived alone. I have no roommates, I have no partners or anybody I'm with or anything like that. And there's a lot of freedom that comes with that. I mean, right now, it's Saturday afternoon and I'm talking to you fine people, and I didn't need to ask permission from anybody. I didn't need to work around schedules or anything. It was as simple as this is what I want, and I'm going to make it happen. But as my father once gave me a very sound advice for, he's like, don't be with somebody for the sake of being with someone. Be with someone for the sake of you'd rather be with that person than being single and on your own. So there's a lot of big advantages that come with being single and living the bachelor pad lifestyle or bachelorette lifestyle. But if you meet someone who's like, yeah, this is worth an upgrade from what I was doing, rather than, being at home and drinking beer and watching movies and playing video games, I'd rather be with this person than be with that person. Find someone who's worth it, not just for the sake of, I got to be in a relationship sort of thing. All right. So Dave returns back here. Matt, mostly weather preventing running, a little bit time constraint too. Yeah, okay. So if it's weather, then see if you can get a treadmill, gym use, that sort of thing, is things that are going to be inside. That's the sort of stuff that you can work around with that. Or hell, I mean, I'm from Vermont. I'm like, weather, how does that limit you? Get out snowshoeing, get out in a little bit in the rain is okay for you. As they say out here in Colorado, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad equipment or bad gear. So maybe go to the local sporting goods store and be like, okay, with the weather like it is now, is there equipment that you would recommend that I can still get at least some sort of jogging motion in? And they'll probably be like, oh yeah, you want these clothes or whatever to work around that stuff. Jen Zem, hey Jen, good to see you. Hey Matt, limitations is very interesting topic. Personally, I have some herniated disc, busted knee with add-ons and such wear and tear. I like how you call them add-ons there. Took a year to get a deep bodyweight squat, but got there. Congratulations, my friend. Hey man, I know people who've been working out for years who aren't in that deep bodyweight squat, largely because a lot of people just don't prioritize it. And I try to, when I'm coaching classes and stuff, I'm telling people it's like one of the best things you can ever do for your health, performance, and general fitness is achieve the deep bodyweight squat. It is very, very valuable. And that took me a while to achieve and understand myself as well, but it's a big one. Congratulations. I raise my glass to you. All right. So we got our first fundamental principle. We have to have our rocket pointed in the right direction. What fundamental objective is your routine built for? Energy expenditure, muscular conditioning, or specific performance. Once you got that, you're halfway there. The second thing, though, is, and this is where a lot of the, well, how do I work for that? How do I get that sort of thing going? This is where people get tripped up. And believe it or not, a lot of times people will start to think, how many times a week should I work out? And how long should the workout be? And how many exercises? And they're trying to go about it more from the standpoint of, what does the science say is best for reaching this goal? Believe it or not, that's not the way you want to approach it. Because a lot of what makes the how in the applying of the goal or applying of the routine work isn't what is supposedly the best for helping me achieve this objective. It's more along the lines of, what can I just do regularly and consistently regarding whatever I can just do? So whenever I'm meeting with a new client, I say, okay, what do you want? What are your objectives? Okay, good. We got that clear. And then we move on to assessments. And for assessments, I'm trying to get a picture of, what can you do? And this is where a lot of advice, quote, for beginners usually goes off the rails, because you hear a lot of stuff out there like, this is what you should do as a beginner. But the fact is, there's no such thing as a standard beginner. Instead, what you want to do is base things off of your ability to exercise and train. And this goes in many ways. One, of course, is the natural physiological abilities. What can you do? Are you like Gen Z is like, I can do deep bodyweight squats. Great. Or are you someone who's like, I can't get even halfway down without knee pain? Okay, that's something we need to take into consideration. Your squatting ability, your strength, your physiological ability to use your body. We need to start off with what you can currently do. Can you do one-arm push-ups? Great. Then I'm going to train you as someone who can do one-arm push-ups. Do you struggle to get out of a chair? Then I'm going to train you as someone who can struggle to get out of a chair. I'm not going to make bland, blatant assumptions based on things like your age or, like I'm male, female, a lot of the stuff out there these days is the divide and conquer trick with marketing. Oh, you need a special workout or routine because you are this age, or because you're this gender, or because you're busy, or because you don't have cantaloupe in your fridge. I mean, it's always a million different things, right? It's like, I live in the Northern Hemisphere and I work third shift and I'm bald and I have a tendency to over enunciate when I'm excited. Okay, this is the workout routine you need. It's always about trying to make you think you need something special. Most of the time you don't. And if you do need something special, it's based on your current abilities. Just what can you do? I'm not going to make a program based off of your age, because what the hell does that have to do with anything? Yeah, sure, there's ways age influences your performance and what you can do, but sometimes it's positive and sometimes it's negative. You're like, but I'm 40 years old. How do I work out? I don't know. At 40 years old, you could start to have a little wear and tear on the joints that could negatively impact things. But on the other hand, you could be like, I've been training and working out regularly in this discipline for 20 years, so I've got a lot of skills. So we take that into account too. It could be hit or miss. So we take it, what can you do physically? But it's also, what can you do for just resources? What are your time like? What's your schedule like? Are you working 16-hour days, or do you have a job where you're working 7 hours a day? What do you have for resources? I've got an apartment complex with a gym and we've got all this great equipment I can use. Awesome. Or I've just got a doorway pull-up bar and a medicine ball. Okay, that comes into a play too. A lot of what goes into the how you do things in your workout isn't about your objective or what the science is or anything. It's just, what can you do? What can you consistently do? And more importantly, what can you do with relative ease? Because that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, is like, okay, I've got this much time and I got this much ability, so I'm going to use as much as I possibly can. I'm going to drive myself into the ground every time and put as much time, energy, and effort into this, which I know it makes sense because you want to get as far as you can, but how easy is that to maintain? Remember, we're like a rocket ship on a launch pad. Our routine is the launch pad. All it needs to do is point us in the right direction, and it needs to stabilize you. It needs to give you firm ground and footing. And when it comes to your training and your workout, stability means consistency. What can you maintain with relative ease? If you create a plan or a program that's constantly stressing your time and your schedule and your body and your resources, how easy is it for you to maintain it? If you can't maintain it relatively easily, you lose your stability. And if you don't have stability, it's like a rocket that's just tipping over on the launch pad. So a lot of the things of what should I do just boil down to, what can you do with relative ease? What kind of exercises? What kind of tools can you use? What kind of schedule? Should I work out twice a week or 3 times a week? I don't care. I don't think it matters. But which one's going to be easier for you to stick to? Which one's going to be easier for you to maintain? Well, should I do leg day on Wednesday or should I do it on Friday? I don't know. Does it really matter? Well, I ski on Wednesdays. Well, okay, you probably want fresher legs for Wednesdays or Thursdays or whatever. So let's have it a different day. So that way it's not something that is inhibiting you. Let's get to some more questions here real quick. Hey, Jaukum, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. My apologies if not. Hey, Matt, my left upper trap hurts when I do push-ups. Any thoughts on why and should I move with my push work? I suspect something is on my left side isn't strong enough. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're just scapular elevation. So that when you're pushing up your upper body, you're elevating like that. Now that's supposed to happen. Your upper traps are most certainly supposed to work during a push-up. It's your lower traps that's not packing you down. So what you want to do is, again, so now we have something specific, performance related. We have the third objective. We want to be able to do push-ups without scapular elevation and excessive activation. Okay, so we have a specific performance that we want in your next workout. Good, we've got our objective. Now we need to create the stability by saying, okay, do you have the resources to practice your push-ups on a regular basis? Probably, because it doesn't take much resources to do that. But if you're doing your push-ups and you don't have the personal resources to prevent that from happening, then we need to make the workout and program it until you do. So I would bet dollars to donuts that you don't have the strength in other parts of your back to keep your shoulder blades packed during a push-up. So what do? We regress. Lots of times when we're going after a performance objective, it's a lot easier to improve the skillful performance by a regression in resistance or intensity. As a friend of mine once told me, be careful with intensity. It just reinforces your current habits. Whether they're good habits or bad habits, intensity doesn't make you better. It just reinforces what you have. So what we want to do is scale back the intensity. Practice warming up push-ups on like a countertop or something. Watch yourself in the mirror. If you are at a gym and there's a barbell rack, and a mirror right there and stuff, perfect. I did this on dips today. I was watching my right shoulder. So it was usually tendency to hunch up on that side. Pack it down. You can observe a lot by watching, says Yogi Berra. So do your push-ups on relatively inclined surface and watch out for that push-up hunch. Keep it back. Keep your shoulders packed. Practice that as much as you can because the performance objective is to get your shoulders down and back, and that'll probably take care of you. So see how this works? We just programmed out your workouts. We have an objective, and we take a look at what you can do, and you could probably tell me what you can do. Or just inherently, this stuff should be pretty self-evident, right? It's like, well, how do I know? It's like, okay, do a 3-hour workout. Well, I don't have time for that. Well, there you go. You don't have time for that. Don't do that. That's not the way to go about it. I have 15 minutes. Well, then you use 15 minutes because that's what you can do. But this is how we program things. Champ in the making back again. Excuse me, a drink again. Pardon. Hey, Matt, I used to do 5 a.m. cardio always. But here it's like 50% chance every time of getting a problem, especially at that hours. Try jumping rope, but it's not like taking a morning walk. Any recommendation? Little clarity there, my friend, please. But it's like 50% chance of getting it in. Why not? Access to equipment. Like why can't you get your 5 a.m. cardio in? Why can't you do the working? What's the limitation you're running into? So see how this programming is an ever-evolving thing. This is one of the things about workout programs. I think that we sometimes want the happily ever after, where it's like, okay, I got my program, I got my routine, everything's set in stone, and now I ride off into the sunset because this is going to take care of me for the rest of my life. No, you need to be flexible. You need to have adaptation to your program because a lot of what makes it work and gives you that stability is working with your circumstances, your resources, your preferences, and so on. But that stuff is bound to change. So people right now, they're saying, I like to do X, but I've got something that's now starting to inhibit me. Okay, you change your program to work around those limitations. You change up the program because of whatever that's holding you back. That's why you make the changes to the program. Okay, a lot of times it's about having flexibility and fluidity. As long as you can still maintain that direction towards one of those 3 fundamental objectives, you can make whatever changes you need and are necessary in order to keep heading in that direction. But the big mistake a lot of people make are they're like, this is the program. I'm going to stick to it to the letter. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to be on the straight and narrow. I'm not going to change anything. And not knowing that's actually making them tilt off and they're missing their objective, even though they're sticking to the routine. Do not make the routine your overlord. You're in charge of the routine. Don't make the routine in charge of you. Sniff Rat asking a good one. Hey, Matt, how do I get started doing bridges? So refer to my book, Smart Bodyweight Training, Grind Style Calisthenics, or the Classic Convict Conditioning. Either of those are good ways of addressing the bridge or the extension chain. And the most basic way to go about it is with lying hip bridges. That's a good way to go. into it. Pretty easy exercise. Most anybody can do that. The isometric kickback is really good if you don't have glute and hamstring activation. In my book, Overcoming Isometrics, it's a good place to start as well. But that's where you start. You start with the hip style extension for bridges. Once you've got that down, then you go with the spinal extension style bridges, where you're on an elevated surface, your shoulders are on an elevated surface, getting the arms back and your shoulders packed, and then you can just lift your torso off the surface a little bit, and that's something that can move you forward with that. Jen Zem, hey, as a physiological thing, I'm 6'8". This gives some interesting challenges in regards fulcrum's weight and such. Not a flagpole like a retired heavyweight boxer, jacket size. Yeah. So that's exactly it. Like, again, we're talking about, we have a size, a body size. You're 6'8". That's pretty darn tall. What things are going to be more suitable for you than others? What things are just more adequately for your body type? And also, don't neglect just general preference either. Like, if you're trying to build muscle, you just got to make the muscle work hard. It doesn't really matter what you do to do that. So you're going to find there's natural preferences towards some types of training or tools or exercise and stuff. Don't force yourself to use things that are just outside your preferences. As long as you're making the muscle work hard, then do whatever you want. Same thing with calorie and energy expenditure. I hate running. Well, then why are you running? You'll burn energy doing anything. There's no good reason to do stuff you don't want to do if you don't have to. And in the case that I would say probably is required is more in the specific performance aspect of it, when the goal is to be able to perform in a certain way. Like, I hate kettlebell work, but I want to pass the RKC snatch test. Well, then you're going to have to do kettlebell work. But that's a usual rare exception, because if you have the goal of performance, you probably have some desire for that performance as well, to do that thing. But seriously, like, if you don't want to do the thing, that type of exercise or whatever, and it's not something you specifically need to do, then there's zero good reason to force yourself to do it. But I know in our fitness culture, there's that rhetoric of you got to force yourself to do things you don't want to do and all that sort of thing. Trust me, training's going to be plenty challenging as it is. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. It's going to push you physically, mentally, and emotionally, no matter what. So adopting things that are outside of your preferences just because they're hard is a complete foolhardy approach, because you're putting a lot of energy and attention towards something that is completely unnecessary. And if you're putting it there, that means you're neglecting the ability to put your efforts towards the things that's actually going to make a difference. So you're effectively robbing yourself. It's kind of like getting your paycheck, buying things you don't want, and then wondering why you don't have money for the things you do want. That's exactly what's going on. It's a misallocation of resources. So have the freedom and the flexibility. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what some guys like. This is the best exercise ever. If you want to build muscle, you got to do this type of training and stuff. Screw it. To hell with it. All it needs to do is satisfy the fundamental objectives that I talked about earlier. That's the only requirement. Unless your goal is to specifically perform with that particular method, that method is completely optional. And if you don't want to do it and it's not desired or required, don't do it, for the love of everything sacred and holy. Let's see. Leroy the man. Hey, Matt, how do I cycle my caffeine intake in order to get the benefits, especially during a hard workout? I drink 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day. I don't feel the same energy anymore. So yeah, you're going to have a adaptation to your caffeine consumption and diet, as all things will. Remember, we have adaptation to everything we do. And the reason why we have adaptation is to achieve a homeostatic state from whatever these things are in our circumstances. So when you started to drink caffeine, you had a little bump up and you're like, woohoo, yay, I'm awake, I'm feeling good, this is awesome. But then your body started to just change in many subtle ways to regain a homeostatic state with caffeine consumption. So you weren't getting as much of that energy bump. You're more level, because that's why we adapt. to not have those things happen. So a couple of things you can do is to just not have caffeine on non-workout days, and then you have it before your workouts. So that'll give you a little bit more of a jolt. And also to just simply cut back. It could be another thing, like I can't go without caffeine. Okay, fine. Then have a little bit of it on the non-workout days and then have some of it. Also experiment with different sources of caffeine. So you mentioned coffee there. Pay attention if different sources make you feel differently. Now, I'm a Monster energy drink fan, and I like that stuff, but I typically don't feel too much about a bump up most times. And if I drink that stuff before a workout, I'm a little jittery and wired, and I don't like that during my workouts. But I also drink black tea, and black tea is much smoother and easier on my system as far as my energy. It doesn't make me feel kind of jittery. It just makes me feel like I'm having a really good workout and just feeling really good. So experiment with your sources, experiment with the doses, but don't, the biggest thing is don't consume it when out of habit. Consume it when you want it to have an effect. And that's probably going to increase the chances of having an effect. Let's see. What else? Oh, yes. One other thing. So the other thing to note about a good routine is, like I said much earlier at the beginning of this thing, is your success does not depend on your routine. Your routine has only two jobs. It's supposed to stabilize you and get you pointing in the right direction. That's it. If you've got that, it's as good as it's going to be. But don't look at it like you're trying to crack some sort of a Da Vinci Code formula for the gains and the weight loss or the success that you want, because ultimately that doesn't depend on your routine. Your body doesn't have adaptive abilities for the off chance that someday you would be able to do a routine. Like, we've adapted and evolved this human body over eons of time, and you didn't get the ability to get a bigger chest because someday in the millions of years in the future, you would be in a gym working out on a bench press. Our body adapts for the sake of regaining homeostasis according to its environmental stimuli. Whether that stimuli is there in a routine or not, or what the routine looks like, isn't really that important. What you want to do to get the results you want, the real essence that propels you forward, is not the routine. It's the progression of how you're doing the routine. What are you doing better over time? So with energy expenditure, that's usually not something you progress a huge amount, because the goal is literally just expend energy. You get it out, good. That's as good as you're going to get. You could always have more intensity, more duration and frequency. Instead of being active twice a week, you're active 5 times a week. Good. There's a progression. You're burning more energy. Congratulations. That's as simple as just doing more. But of course, you can't infinitely do that because you can't scale hard work. So for that, progression is usually not something I'm too hard up on. It's usually just burn a bunch of energy, feel good, and leave it at that. It's done. It's got the job done. Mission accomplished. When it comes to your muscular conditioning, progression is in the amount of tension in the muscle and the amount of time for the tension. So time and tension. So for some of us, that comes down to getting the tension in the muscle in the first place, which is why I always recommend the overcoming isometrics. It's why we have the specific warm-up in grind style calisthenics to engage the muscle better, because you can only build and strengthen a muscle to the degree you can engage it. And the number one reason why most people never stand a chance of building their muscle is they just don't have a good way of engaging it. If you don't have a good ability to engage it, that coveted mind-muscle connection, nothing you do will ever work. There's no possible way. It's like trying to turn on a light bulb without it plugged into an electric socket. But the good news is, once it's engaged, then almost anything will work. You could literally do anything and it's going to work. But then it just boils down to, are you getting more tension in the muscle? There's usually a correlation of more resistance, or just working it for longer durations of time, and a combination of the two. So that's your progression for muscular work capacity. And then when it comes to performance, that should be fairly self-evident of, you just get better at doing the thing you're trying to get better at. You know, I'm hitting my golf ball straighter. I'm keeping my pelvic tilt more neutral and the back pain is gone. I'm able to run around the track faster, whatever the case may be. When our objective is performance, just, are you performing better? That's what really gets the results, not your routine. Not, am I working out twice a week versus once a week versus 3 times a week and cycling and all these sorts of things. that stuff is all just about creating that stability to get me to that objective better, and then progressively getting that objective over time. That's where the results come from. If you're making your bicep muscles work progressively harder over time, they're gonna get stronger, regardless of how you go about doing that. So that's why when our rocket, metaphorically speaking, we're stable, we're pointing in the right direction, you blast off, you need to keep going forward. That's why the rocket goes into space, not because it's on the launch pad. Once it lifts off that launch pad, the launch pad has done its job. It is finished. It has got the job done. And that's what your workout routine does. Point in the right direction and you're nice and stable. Good. Now you blast off. Now it's about what your rocket, AKA your body, does better over time to reach higher and higher and higher. That's how you reach the heights you want to go to. That's what's really important for your results, not how is your launch pad oriented and stuff. It's just got to point you in the right direction and give you stability. But your objective is to progressively move forward and higher with your training. And that's what the most important. Get to a couple more questions here to close on out. Robert Marsh saying, hello, I'm currently taking prednisone. No, excuse me. I think I mispronounced that. Steroids for a brain injury. I can work out fine. I'm slowly coming off the roids, but how can I make the most of them while I'm on them? Well, it depends on what the steroids do and are. This is one of the big misconceptions about steroids, is that there's like this thing called steroids and you inject it into your body and it makes you bigger and stronger. It depends on what the steroids are. It depends on what their job is. I mean, it's a very, 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 very complicated thing. It's not as simple as take this pill, stick a needle in your ass, you're going to get big and jacked. Some steroids are better for helping you get leaner. Some of them are better for building muscles. Some of them are better for strength. Some of them have a longer cycle, some of a shorter cycle. Some you very well could be on a steroid there that has nothing to do with building muscle and strength at all. You know, you could go to your doctor and be like, okay, so how do I keep the muscle and strength benefits of these steroids while I'm on it? And they're like, you're not going to build muscle on this. Are you kidding me? That's that kind of steroid. This is this other kind of steroid. No, that has nothing to do with it. So that's a thing to ask your doctor is, does this have an influence on my ability to build muscle and strength? And in what way and how much and how long and so on and so on and so on. And that's what you want to get clear on, because just because you're on steroids doesn't mean you're getting hardly any benefit for muscle and strength, that sort of thing. But your doctor is going to know a lot more about that. It's one of the big reasons why I've never really been too tempted to venture into that space, because I've known more than a few guys who are like, I'm going to get into steroids, and it ruins their physique because they don't know what they're doing. I've been not a member, but I've gone through like message boards. I mean, yeah, this is way back in the day, before social media and stuff, but there were message boards for people on steroids. And boy, you think the world of diet and exercise is crazy and confusing and paralysis by analysis. The world of steroids is way more complicated. And the stakes are higher, because if you get it wrong, it's going to get ugly. And I'm not saying like health risks and all that sort of thing. I mean, I've literally seen guys that's like, I'm on steroids. And they're like, dude, I've seen long haul truck drivers with better physiques than you do. No offense, but yeah. So you can, that's not something I've dabbled in just because I don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. You get it wrong, it's going to get wrong real fast. If you get it right, it's awesome, but you better have someone who knows what they're doing with it, because it's complicated. Chris, if I follow your way of eating without counting calories, how do I know if I'm eating enough to grow? Since I started doing bike delivery, I cycle for 5 hours. Yeah, you're going to need to eat a lot there, buddy. 5 hours. So it boils down to just measure your weight. Okay. Know what your weight is like. And of course, also recognize your appetite. So a lot of times if your body has demand for more, it's going to ask for more. This is the joke around the household here. Whenever I'm in just this cycle where my body's like, okay, let's build, let's go. And I'll be like eating much more food. And my friends are like, oh, your tapeworm's back. I'm like, oh yeah, man. It's like, I'm just eating all day, every day kind of thing. So listen to your appetite, but also just watch the scale. If it's going down, eat more kind of thing. And pay attention to your ability to also just perform as well. If you're starting to feel tired, lethargic, I got no energy and stuff, try eating more. A lot of times that's just, it's one of the 4 primal appetites I talk about in smart bodyweight training is energy level. We should have a decent amount of energy level. If you're not having good energy and these mood fluctuations and stuff, could be you're just not getting quite as much. Robert coming on back again. They reduce inflammation. Thanks. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe a steroid can do something for muscle there. Although I would even go so far as to say if you're on a steroid that reduces inflammation, it may very well hurt your ability to make gains. And this is one of the things that now a lot of the research they're showing that suggests like things like ice baths, a lot of ibuprofen use, anti-inflammatory measures can help recovery. But theoretically, what's going on is the inflammatory process to really working your muscles hard could be part of the signaling that tells your muscles to get bigger and potentially stronger. But I'm guessing it's more on the size thing. So some of the research kind of is suggesting, well, ice baths and stuff can mitigate hypertrophy because you're mitigating inflammation. A lot of times, inflammation gets a bad rap. It's this thing of like, no inflammation, anti-inflammatory, no inflammation diet. Inflammation is a natural process in the human body. For one thing, you can't stop it. And 2, it has health benefits, folks. It's there for a good reason. And a lot of times it's there to kick off a cascade of changes that allow us to adapt to the stimuli that we're exposing ourselves to. Sometimes reducing inflammation, I'm not saying this is your case, of course, Robert, with what's going on in your head, but sometimes we need some inflammation to get the changes we want. So in that case, with your take, I would say if you get off those steroids, it may be actually more beneficial for helping you build muscle and strength. They may be even inhibiting you. I'm spitballing though. I'm just connecting dots. I could be totally off the grid with this sort of thing. This is a lot of theoretical new stuff in the research field. It's not necessarily in stone. I'm just, this is how science works sometimes. It's like, well, we think kind of possibly maybe this thing might be happening, but we need more research. That's usually how science works. So that's what I'm doing right now. Nothing set in stone, but something to think about, something to just kind of stick in the back of your mind as you gather more information. Alex, I'm a truck driver, former U.S. Army Staff Sergeant, and I still find time to work out. Congratulations. I'm 5 foot 6 inches, weigh 221, and I still look square, just need to get rid of 6 inches around my waist, but it's not noticeable. Fantastic. Yeah, and that's the other thing we were talking about when it was the physique that you have. We're all built different. We all have different physiques. It sounds kind of like you have a bit of a physique like I do. I've always been a very blocky torso. Like I'm never going to have that nice tapered V shape. I'm never going to be that nice, long, slender look like my brother-in-law is a cross-country runner. He looks like he's kind of stretched out a little bit, very nice and slender. I'm never going to be that. I'm not built that way kind of thing. I'm built the way I am. So I always say you can never change your body, but you can modify it. So a lot of times when we're looking at, I want to make some changes, be mindful of if you're going after a physique that's just totally out of left field from what your physique is actually built for. Dave, very good. Technically, cholesterol is a steroid. Steroids is a vast chemical family. Absolutely. You're very, very correct, Dave. It's very, very true. And that's a marketing strategy that often goes about to kind of dupe people in fitness. Is there'll be a term out there that kind of gets people to have an emotional reaction like, oh, I don't want that. Oh, that's really good. And it's a way to convince people, oh, buy this product or do this, don't do that kind of thing. When really there's a lot more nuance to it, like inflammation. Like a lot of times people are like, oh, if you do this, it causes inflammation. Oh, I don't want to do that. I'm like, dude, everything causes inflammation. Exercise causes inflammation. Freaking sunlight causes inflammation. Like if you spend your whole workout program and your diet is all based around not having any inflammation, you're missing the, forest for the trees, as it were. You're kind of getting led astray. Your attention is misapplied. And a lot of times, like I said, you're focusing on the wrong things. So there you go, folks. Thank you so much for coming on and asking questions. Always a pleasure here on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel. Remember, the sponsor for today's episode is the books that I've written, Grind Style Calisthenics I mentioned, Overcoming Isometrics for that muscular activation, particularly for the second objective. Highly recommend that. Links to all those books and more are down below. I really appreciate it. Helps to support the channel here and helps me pay the rent. So thank you very much. And we'll be doing this again next week. Same rough time, 2:30 Saturday. And I hope you have a very strong week. Till then, be fit and live free.